Did you know that running can actually cause you to lose muscle mass? I know this because it happened to me. Years ago when I was still working, I used to get these roughly annual physicals, and part of that, they would measure my body composition, what percentage of my body's water, fat, muscle, and so forth. And the first physical I had after I started running, I've been running about a year, they told me I had lost lean muscle mass. It's like, holy cow, how did that happen? So we had a discussion. They told me it was probably due to my running, my long distance endurance running, because I was training to run a trail marathon and had done that. If they told me why that happened, I don't recall, but I do know since then I've learned that if we don't get the right nutrition, if we don't get enough energy to support our run, our body can actually break down muscle and use it for energy. So what they told me to do was start working out with weight-bearing exercises, lifting weights, going to the gym, which I did. Now what they didn't tell me also to do, which they should have told me to also do, is eat more protein. Hi, I'm Ralph, the Ageless Runner, and welcome to the next episode in my series on running endurance. We're going to talk about nutrition. I'm going to start off talking about protein. We'll talk about a few other things, but protein is so important. In fact, if you watch nothing else in this video, please watch the protein section because I'm guessing you may not be getting enough protein to support your running activities. As we've talked in previous videos, we know when we run, we could damage our muscles. We get these micro tears, and certainly if we're doing weight-bearing exercises, we damage our muscles, and we need to repair those muscles and build muscle, and we need protein to do that. And if you don't get enough protein, you're simply not going to be repairing and building your muscles adequately. Now, here in the United States, the recommended amount of protein is roughly 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. Let me translate that for my US subscribers. That's 0.36 grams of protein per pound of body weight. So I'll use myself as an example. I weigh 190 pounds. That means, according to the United States government, I need roughly 68 grams of protein a day to have good health. Now, to put that in perspective, 4 ounces of chicken breast has roughly 30 to 35 grams of protein. So eating a chicken breast today would give me roughly half the amount of protein I need. So the 68 is probably a minimum, but I have a couple of things going on. The first thing I've got going on, and you may also, is that we're older. As we age, we lose muscle mass. It's just part of aging. So we need more protein anyway, and also our bodies don't synthesize protein as well. Now, one source I looked at recommended that they looked at a group of people between 65 and 70, and there they recommended that those people get 1 gram of protein per kilogram of body weight. Said another way, that's 0.45 grams of protein per pound of body weight. So now my 68, let me look at my notes there. Now my 68 goes up to 86. That's another 18 grams a day. That's like a protein drink or protein bar. I can probably swing that. Now, next thing, of course, I'm a runner, you're a runner, and because we're active and we exercise like that, we need more protein. Now, there was a paper published in 2019 in the National Library of Medicine that kind of did a literature review. They looked at papers and things published roughly between 1980 and 2018, looking at nutrition needs for endurance athletes. It just didn't cover protein. It talked about carbohydrates and fat and some other things. And I will link to that paper down below if you want to look at it. It's got a lot of great information in it. Now, in that paper, they kind of summarized recommendations of several organizations, the Dietitians of Canada, the National College of Sports Medicine, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietitian. And what they recommend for modest exercise, modest activity, and they call modest roughly an hour a day, which is kind of where I am, man. I'm sure I don't do an hour a day, but I'm going to put myself in that category. Now, for modest exercise, they say the recommended protein needs are between 1.2 and 2.0 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, which roughly translates to 0.54 to 0.9 grams of protein per pound of body weight. So using that 0.54 number, that kind of low end of that recommendation, now my protein needs are 103 grams per day. So the U.S. minimum for me, I would need 68 grams. For an older adult, based on the one recommendation I found, I would need 86 grams. That's that 0.45 grams per pound. So that's 86 grams. But now, as a runner, meeting that 1.2 grams per kilogram or 0.54 grams per pound, now I need 103 grams. So now I'm a full 35 grams more protein per day than U.S. minimum. So what should you be doing? Let me tell you my recommendation. Let me tell you what I'm doing. My wife and I have decided, just because of our age, we're targeting roughly 0.5 grams of protein per pound of body weight. That's roughly 1.1 gram per kilogram. That more than meets the needs for an older adult to help maintain our muscle mass. Now, on days that I run, for 24 to 48 hours after that, I'm going to up my protein. And you remember I said the minimum from the recommendation from the paper was 0.54 grams per pound. I'm going to shoot for 0.6. 0.6 grams per pound for my weight makes 114 grams of protein per day. That's roughly 1.3 grams per kilogram. So half a gram per pound every day. We're going to try and eat that every day. But for 24 to 48 hours after a run, after especially a hard run, I'm going to up that to roughly 0.6 grams per pound, which is 1.3 grams per kilogram. Now, the reason you kind of want to make sure you have extra protein after you run is the body is most receptive to absorb protein for 24 hours after a run. So that's the time if you want to increase your protein, do it then. Now, many of you are probably like me in that we rely on carbohydrates to fuel our run. I know there's a few of you, you make comments on my channel that don't do that. You eat, very low carb, either carnivore or keto, and rely on ketosis to burn fat and provide ketones to support your run. And there's nothing wrong with that. That actually is not a bad way to do it, but that's a lifestyle change. I read that our glycogen stores in our body are roughly 2,500 calories. And once you run out of that, then we're going to hit the wall, which is why we need to consume carbohydrates while we run. But it said even a lean individual could have 70,000 calories in fat storage in their body. So you can run a lot longer without having to refuel if you're doing low carb, high fat kind of diet. But that's beyond the scope of this video. We're not going to talk about that. I'm not going to talk about how many carbs you should eat day in and day out. That's really a personal decision based on your health, your dietary needs, because there's a lot of controversy about that. A lot of people advocate low carb, high carb. I will tell you the U.S. recommendation is 45 to 65% of your calories should be carbohydrates. Believe me, if I ate that many carbs, I would probably not only be fat, I'd probably be diabetic. I think that's way too many carbs. That's my personal opinion. But I do want to talk about carbs during your run, and there are some specific recommendations in that paper for that. And the first recommendation is if you're running less than an hour, you probably have enough glycogen stores in your body. You don't need to consume anything while you're running. But once you get over an hour, once you're running, say, an hour to 2.5 hours, the recommended amount of carbohydrates per hour is 20 to 60 grams. So consuming 20 to 60 grams of carbohydrates per hour should be enough to fuel your run. You have to experiment with that. How hard are you running? How long you're running? What's the weather like that? I generally shoot for about 50 grams of carbs per hour. That works best for me. Now, that paper went on and made another recommendation. It says if you're running more than 2.5 hours, there's some evidence to support that consuming more carbohydrates, like 60 to 70 grams per hour, may improve in performance, and that's a may. And it also depends if you can tolerate that many carbs. That's a lot of carbohydrates per hour. So I'm just putting that out there. Again, you can look at the paper, but if you're running for a long, extended period of time, you may want to look at higher carbohydrates. But in the meantime, shoot for that 20 to 60 grams per hour. Now, let me last touch a little bit about hydration. There's two concerns, of course, with hydration. One is you're underhydrated, which has problems, can cause muscle cramps and all kinds of issues when we're running. And the other one is overhydration, something called hyponatremia, which is actually a low sodium. We drink too much water. It's not real common. It doesn't happen a lot. Although I found some data from the 2002 Boston Marathon that says 16% of the runners showed some evidence of hyponatremia, and just under 1% were critical. It can actually be a serious situation. And it also said that runners most at risk for this are slower, lower weight runners on warm days. So if you're in that category, be very careful not to overdrink your water. But again, the paper kind of recommended that we consume roughly 400 to 800 milliliters per hour while we're running. Obviously that's a big range, but it depends on your body size, how hard you're working, what the weather conditions are like. But try and do in that range. I like to drink by time. I'll drink every 15 to 20 minutes. I would not recommend you drink to thirst. Some research out there supports drinking to thirst when you're thirsty drink. The problem with that is as we get older, our sense of thirst diminishes, and that could be risky. So 400, 800 milliliters per hour, consumed roughly every 15 to 20 minutes. Now, let me make one tip for you on post-run recovery. When you're done with your run, of course, you want to get some protein and carbohydrates in you. We know you've probably depleted some of your glycogen. We know you've damaged some of your muscles, so you need to get those in there. Now, research suggests a ratio of carbohydrates to protein of 3-to-1 to 4-to-1 are best for recovery. They'll best help you recover from your long run or your hard run. So what that says is if you have 10 grams of protein, eat 30 to 40 grams of carbohydrates. There are recovery drinks out there that do that. And of course, you can do it through food. Eat a little chicken, have some bagel or something like that. But shoot for 3-to-1 to 4-to-1 carbohydrate to protein after you run to help with recover and begin the muscle repair that you need. So just in conclusion here, please think about your protein needs. Protein doesn't get talked about much in the running world. We don't really discuss it very much. It's really important. You may not be getting enough protein. Make sure you understand what I said earlier in the video, and you could also look at the paper for more information. There's actually lots of good information in that paper beyond what I talked about here. Now, my next video in this series will actually be my last video in this series. We're going to kind of wrap things up and talk about the 80-20 guideline. In the meantime, if you like this video, please scroll down and hit that like icon. And if you're new here, please consider subscribing. I'd love to have you stick around. Thank you so much and happy running.